Because when Christ begins the millennial kingdom, imagine a Picasso. Take the Mona Lisa, okay? And someone started shooting BBs at it and throwing paintballs at it, and she's in really bad shape, okay? The way I see this is God's going to wipe the canvas clean, because he has that really good toner that remends net and everything, that will make it perfect again. And he's going to reform it, and then it will be constructed throughout the millennial kingdom. He's not going to do it all for us, but he's going to tidy up a little bit, at least to a degree. Get things somewhat back in shape. Got ahead of my notes again. That's funny. I read all these notes thinking I'm going to need them, and I really never do. The question is, why are there 75 days? Okay, well, the one thing I just mentioned is the temple needs to be cleansed. I imagine this will be one of the first things. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to I wish I had a projector at this point. I mean, I have one, but I don't have time to make all these things. You have the first 30-day period, which is what I in my mind, I consider to be the cleansing. Okay? I see that as when all the cleansing of the earth in every way. Cleansing it of people, cleansing it of abominations, getting rid of all the things that cannot be there. And then I consider the second 45-day period, in my mind, will be something along the lines of reconstruction, and I'll get more into that later as we go on. Actually, that'll be up next, it looks like. You guys are all aware Christ will be seated on the world throne, right? He will actually have a throne on the earth during the millennial kingdom. Everyone understand? Is everyone aware of that? Okay. I'm going to clip a little bit of that just in case there is any. Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 3. And it reads, "Now it will come about that in the last days." I want you guys to pay attention. A lot of the verses I'm going to read tonight are going to have those two words, or four actually, in the last days. Or it's last days. If you see last days next to each other, we pretty much know it's going to be during the tribulation or at the end of the tribulation, because it's all prophecy. We don't really know much about what's going to happen during the millennial kingdom. I'll give you some detail and I'll give you what I have. But there's some things like, what are we going to do for jobs? Are we going to have jobs? Are we going to have cars? I don't know. Okay? I couldn't tell you. And as a disclaimer, God may not see this as a 30-day period and a 45-day period. I'm assuming there has to be some significance to them, but it's an assumption. The reason for the assumption is that it's distinguished. We have these numbers that give us a 30, and then the other numbers that give us another 45. It's 75 total, but he could have just said, then there's going to be 75 days between the two, and not used anything else. He gave us the words and the different number sets, I'm assuming, so that to let us know there is a differentiation between these things are going to happen first and these will happen second. But it does not tell us which goes where, in the first half or the latter half. So what I'm going to give you guys now is a assumption where I think they will go, which category I think they will fall under. Okay? A lot of this really depends on how long it takes God to do certain things. Or, Jesus. God's still up in heaven. Anyway, Isaiah, chapter 2, verses 2 through 3. "Now it will come about in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains." Okay, Zion, basically. It'll be reestablished. "And will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. And many peoples will come and say, 'Come, let us go up to the mount of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." So that if there ever was any doubt, that clears it up. In those days, they will say, "Come on, let's go get taught. Let's go see teacher." Imagine you walk out the door, and you see a 500-foot mountain thing in front of you. At the top of it, there's this radiant light just glowing. And if you walk up those steps, there's a temple. And if you walk into that temple, there's a throne. And on that throne is literally your Creator sitting there saying, welcome, my child. I mean, can you imagine? Imagine what that's going to feel like. You can just walk up the hill and go see Him. There He is. Okay, let's go. He's just sitting there. And the best thing, He's omniscient. There can be 500 billion trillion people standing there, and He can talk to each one of them simultaneously. Which means you get all the attention you need. And I'll tell you what, if you watch people, people need attention to a degree. I think Christians less so. I mean, we're not so much driven by pats on the back and, all that crap. But people out in the world, oh my God, they're drama queens, every one of them. They got to have it. Look at me. Pay attention to me. You can tell a good Christian from a bad Christian really easily. Well, at least in one particular way. If you have a Christian who brags about all the people they've helped, all the poor they've donated to, and their tithes, and all the offerings they gave to the people, something's wrong. The Bible says, don't tell your left hand what your right hand's doing. Which means when you give, do it so your left hand can't see you. Why? It doesn't need to know. Which means neither should anybody else. Just a thought. So He's going to be sitting there in the temple on Mount Zion, which will be the highest point in the world. I don't really know what the geography is going to be like, because before this point in time, the bowl judgments laid every mountain flat. So, it could be 10 feet elevated and it'd be the highest. So, I really don't know. In my head, I have this Hercules kind of imagination thing from the movie in there, where it's like this hill comes like almost perfectly straight upwards, and on top of it, there's this giant mansion sitting up there, That's how my brain sees it. I don't think it's going to be that way, unless we can all fly, Well, the glorifieds hopefully can fly. I really won't care, because He'll wipe away every tear from my eye, but I'll want to be upset if I can't fly. Just saying. Why are you laughing? I know, right? I want it. See? That's why, because when I get murdered, when I get my glorified body, I won't care anymore. If I can fly, okay, just to serve you. I know that's how it's going to be. But right now, I want to be able to fly. I want to Peter Pan it through the door and just be gone. Anyway. Again, my breakdown for the periods is not biblical fact. It's merely how I think it will go. In the 30-day period, the temple, I think, will be the most likely one of the very first things that needs to happen. Because if there's an image of the beast in the temple, I can't see Christ walking up there, pushing it aside, just moving it out of the way, like over there where the stage is, and then just sitting down on the throne that's His. And it still be in the room. Talk about a white elephant in the room. It'd be really funny if he actually looks like an elephant and it's white. I'll laugh my butt off. We'll find out. So I imagine that will be one of the first things that happens. But it will not be on the first day. I just think it'll be within that first 30-day time frame. Okay? Now, we know that the Antichrist and the prophet, they've been dealt with. They were cast alive into the fiery lake. Now, quick notation here. The Scripture says they are cast alive into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is not hell. We all get that? It's not hell. It is not Sheol. The lake of fire is the lake of fire. Presently, if it exists, it is empty. There's no one in the lake of fire. I will explain why as we go on. So the Antichrist and the false prophet, they've been dealt with. They're receiving their punishment. The bodies of the slain, because at the end of 19 last week, it says the false prophet and the Antichrist were cast alive in the lake of fire. And then the following verse, the armies of the Antichrist are basically slain by the word. So Christ killed them. Okay? You have to remember that there's a distinct junction there. These were cast alive into the lake of fire, and these were slain. It has to be two places, or else there would be no need to distinct a difference between the consequence. Because if they were going to follow them, it could have just said the Antichrist, false prophet, and their armies were cast into the lake of fire. But because they were cast there alive and these just died, they can't end up in the same place, or there'd be no point in doing it. And God does not waste His time. He does not do things for no reason whatsoever. Okay? And you also got to remember the bodies of the armies are being gorged on by birds at this point in time too. So it's part of the cleanup crew. So I guess it depends on how many birds they bring. If it's only 1 billion, it might take them a couple weeks. If it's a couple trillion, they can do it in an hour or so. It also depends on if they're supernatural or earthly birds, so which we don't really know one way or the other. Anyway, all right, we're actually going to touch Revelation very briefly. Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things, he must be released for a short time. Okay, so we have the devil bound. He's put in the abyss. Not the lake of fire, the abyss. So if the lake of fire was an option, it just used it by 4 scriptures, or actually 2 scriptures previously to this one. If it was an option, it would have been used. I surmise. Okay? But he was bound and put in the abyss. Well, we've referenced the abyss before. When the angel was cast from heaven down to the earth, he unlocked the abyss and released the locusts. So, I think it's safe to say that's the same abyss where Satan is now bound. Now, those demons that were in the abyss, they had to be released in order to do anything. How'd they get there? God put them there. It's the only answer we need. Why? Doesn't matter. God put them there. And they're bound. So any demon that was in that abyss before they were released is unable to affect the world or anybody in it at any point in time. That stands to reason because when the devil's in there, he can't do anything. We know because it says he will deceive the nations no longer for a time. So for 1,000 years, the devil will be unable to tempt anybody. And if the devil's there, all his baddies are probably there too. It doesn't say point blank specifically. That's an assertion, basically. It follows to reason. Okay? If it goes to the point that people will not be tempted anymore, then if God just put Satan there and not his baddies too, then it wouldn't serve much purpose because people would still be tempted. And then it removes the, as we get into that, I'll explain that later. Notice in that part we just read that an angel came from heaven. Okay? I want to point that out because I want to draw your attention to the fact that Christ is on the earth, not God. The angel had to come from heaven to earth with the chain to seal the devil. There's still angels in heaven. Now, maybe it's half, maybe it's a third, maybe God has a third, Christ has a third, and the Spirit has a third. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But it doesn't make sense to me that God would send his entire military of angels down to the earth and he's sitting upstairs by himself. He could. It's not beyond his ability. It doesn't make sense to me. I imagine that some of his angels would be like, no, I'm going to stay and serve you. There has to be at least one stubborn one somewhere. You know? He's like that borderline one that's trying not to be the devil. Yeah, right? Trying to how close can get to that line? God smacks him.